everyone. Welcome to the Perspective. Today is called the Soul Perspective. What is your soul? How do we get disconnected to it? And how do we get back connected to it? Well, this next 15 minutes is for you. And so welcome. This is the Perspective on trauma, abuse, chronic pain, and the steps to a healthy, thriving life. And I'm Darlene Turner from VictimToVictory. And I have a special guest today, Claire Dupuis, because our Miss Chrissy couldn't join us today. So I brought in Claire Dupuis from Healthy Dynamics. Welcome, Claire.
Thanks. Hi, Darlene.
Hi. So I'm just going to kind of jump right in and talk about the soul. So the last, quite a while, we've been talking about the physical body. Then we went into the energetic body, and now we're going to talk about our I am presence, our soul, our spirit. What is this part all about? So my definition, kind of how I see the meaning of the soul, it's kind of predetermined before we come into this lifetime, our lessons we want to learn, how we want to evolve as a soul, and our soul kind of guides and leads us back to this path, this destiny that's sort of laid out for us. And you probably have heard some of the terms as in you're an old soul, soul contracts, maybe soul family. There's many different aspects to the soul part, and it is very multidimensional and almost untangible because it's not something that we can actually touch and feel and say this is what it is. Also, it is eternal. It's forever. It's a part of us that we kind of don't really, when we die and we're always afraid of death, well, we don't really ever die. So that's a whole nother concept around that. So our soul is always endlessly searching for wisdom, searching for information, wanting to learn and grow more, as I was talking about. And as I was saying, there's sort of this blueprint or plan for that the soul is laid out. We discuss which we are that soul before we come into this lifetime. And I also believe that souls, we're all connected as souls. So that's my definition. What do you think, Claire? What's your definition of the soul?
Yeah, I think I see the soul as separate from my physical body, right? Like I used to always think that, when I was a teenager and stuff, that, like this thing here was me. And as I've done, my own work and, gone down my own journey for my lifetime, it's understanding that I'm not this. So I get so attached to, or have been so attached to, this being me, that it's always about trying to fix the physical for me. And when I started doing the work, I started realizing that I needed to let some of that stuff go, because it doesn't define who I am. Like me as Claire is not this physical body, and that my personality and everything shines through, and that's more who I am. When I allow myself to be that and allow myself to be me, I think that that's where my soul essence comes in. And when I think when I was doing it before, when I was existing before, it was always about something outside of me externally, right? So when I'm trying to please something outside of me, then I'm not allowing myself to be me. And that is where that comes from, is just, it's kind of like the light inside of us is how I would describe it. It's when you just see somebody just being themselves, and they're, it's not that we don't care about, others around us, but when we can just really be ourselves. And like I said, it's almost like a contentment when it's like an inner peace, and we're not trying so hard, to be something that we're not, is how I kind of see it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to bring up, because a lot of people identify themselves with their job, or sometimes it's a disease, or maybe it's their trauma. It's just kind of becomes who they are, and it's not who they are, is what you're saying, right? It's sort of an identity that we see ourselves as, or as how, like you said to me, we're a mother, we're a friend, we're all these other things, but when we can really step into who and tap into ourselves. It is who are we as an essence, as that light within, as a soul? Who are we, right?
Yeah. And it comes from like an internal drive, right? Like instead of having that, I always say it's kind of like we grow up and, we reach a certain age and we have to go to school, we have to, get out of school, then we have to take responsibility, then we have to get married, then we have to have kids, then we have to do this. And then we hit this like midlife and everybody goes, it's a midlife crisis. And I'm like, well, is it a midlife crisis or is it because we actually really didn't know who we were anyways? So if we're just on this kind of autopilot thing, right, where it's just, we're just going along because those are the external expectations of ourselves, then we can't ever be who we are, and so to me, it's just like the proverbial question is, well, who are we? It's just like, well, that's the journey. That's the fun part of it, right? Like, what is it that this little being wants in here, right? Like, what makes me happy? What makes me tick? What makes me play? And I think when we're in that and we can just let that kind of, the lack of, the inner child out, we can, when we have that playfulness and that joy within, I think that's when our soul sings, right? When we can bring ourselves, and we don't have that when we were kids. I always say when we were kids, we weren't born with all this guilt and shame and all these emotions and that kind of stuff. We were just being, so when we see these babies come into the world, every single one of us was that. And when we see a baby, we're like, oh my God, like look at their bright eyes and look at how happy we are that. Yeah. And I think that's the purest form of our being, of our soul, when we actually come into existence. And then it gets distorted from there, right? From the same thing as I was saying earlier, right? Like the expectations that are put on us. And so then we start to believe, well, we have to be this instead of just being, right? What makes me tick? Do I like to play in the dirt, or, do I like to not get my hands dirty, right? Do I like to, am I loud or am I quiet, or like all these personality things, but we're told from our environment that we need to be this or we need to be that. And then that's what we learn. And I think that's what squashes us, like what just kind of puts our flame out.
Yeah, and, it limits us in a way, right? We're showing what we are. So the next thing I wanted to ask or talk about is, what's the difference between soul and spirit, a spirit of ourselves? So I'll just explain a little bit how I see it. We've already kind of explained how we see the soul. To me, spirit actually can have many different concepts within it. But to me, spirit is the breath of life. It's what gives everything life. It's that chi, that life force that runs through us and through everything. It's that piece of God, or the creator or spirit, like that gives us movement for the soul, that moves our soul. So that's kind of how I see the difference. How about you, Claire?
Yeah, I see it in the same way. It's like, spirit to me is just knowing that, like I had said before, is just like that there's a trust, like no matter what's going on in my day or in my world, if I know that there's something greater than myself out there, that something I can't feel or see or taste or touch or have any senses of, but it's a feeling, it's a sensation within my heart that I'm like, I know I'm supported. I know that even when things are at its worst, that I'm still going to be okay. Right. And even if like bad things happen, it's still okay. It's still part of allowing me as a person, as my soul to expand, to go through the human experience that I'm here to experience. Right. Whether it's, death of family members or friends or, accidents or diseases, or, if I can embrace that and trust, that this is okay, even though it doesn't look okay, I can have a certain sense of peace within that and not be traumatized by the external events to myself, right? And my soul evolves from that, whether it teaches me to grieve or to, to calm down or to be less reactive. It helps me learn how to be more myself in a loving, kind way.
I love that. I love that. It's that support, that it's that, I think of that poem where it said there was no footprints. You were with me all the way, and all of a sudden there was no footprints, and it was like God said, well, I carried you in that part. So I love that you brought that in. That's beautiful. So how does a fragmented soul happen? And that disconnect happen, and I believe it's through trauma, abuse, and even like you said, just that program that we're on, where we're working, we're this, we're that, and we're just going on this hamster wheel, really not sure where we're going, but we're just surviving, really. And I think a big part of that, it does happen toward the middle of life. I think now it's starting to happen a little sooner for people. Is that enjoyment of life, that creative flow? What lights us up? What brings us joy? And I think that's a big part of our journey here, is like we were talking about, is rediscovering who we are, rediscovering that innocence, that baby within us that, came here with that purity. We're not the shame, we're not the guilt, we're not the trauma, we're not the diseases. We're not all these things, right? But we are that purity. We are that light and that beautiful being inside of us. And to get back to that.
Yeah. I always, when I work with people, I call it the brainwashing, right? Is like I said, when you're a child, you don't have, like I say, guilt is not an emotion that we come in with. It's something that's projected onto us that makes us feel bad about ourselves. And so anything that, makes us feel less than, affects our soul. It affects that light within us, right? There's so many ways to, that people, express with it. It's the light within, it's your, shine, it's your whatever, right? Your sparkle. But anything that kind of dulls that, right? And makes us feel less than, that brainwashing, and that happens from our experiences, like how we grew up, the environments that we grew up in. And so, when I work, it's about, not necessarily going and blaming everything that we've gone through in our life, right? And playing the victim role. And, my parents did this to me. I'm like, well, they did. But it's just like, how can you then, as an adult, take that and go, this is how I felt, and just own the emotion around it, so that you don't feel so disconnected because of those events, right? The trauma and all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. So we have some tips for everybody. Tip one is creativity, the flow of spirit. I just finished the book, The Artist Way, and really helped me carve out myself that time to let this flow through me, this creativity, and start connecting to that, whether that was writing and coloring or drawing or garden work, visiting an art store, whatever that is, but re-tap into that creative flow, because that's really spirit flowing through us. It's really our personal unique imprint or expression here in life. And it brings us joy. It helps our soul sing. And I think that really helps us reconnect back to the soul or our essence, or start to get to know what we actually like, is creating that time. And tip two is getting out of autopilot. And I think you're going to explain that one for us.
Yeah, I think the autopilot is just that when we're not, I always kind of say it's like, when we don't even know where we are, we're just kind of doing, right? We're doing that. Like, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I got to do this, I got to go to work, I got to do that. And we don't know what it is that we actually enjoy, as an individual. Like, what is it? So I kind of say, if you feel that way, is to ask yourself the question, where am I? Right. And if you just sit in quiet and just say, like, where am I? Do you feel that you're like in front of yourself a little bit, or to the side, or are you like on a distant planet, like way over there? And just by asking yourself that question, where am I? You're actually tapping into your source, right? Source will bring you back to who you are. If you say, where the hell am I? Like, where am I? It'll actually ground you. It'll bring you back within. So that then you can start to ask those questions about, well, if the more that I'm in here, then the more that I can actually figure out what do I want? What does this soul want? Right.
And it's so true. I just wanted to bring in real quick this evolution or whatever that's happening for our soul, and that it is a joint effort of the body and soul. Like that's that balance physically, mentally, emotionally, environmentally, all these things that we move together and move forward in an evolution. So if we don't have that balance mentally or emotionally or physically, then it causes this feeling of imbalance and insecurity or instability. So we want to bring all of us forward as we evolve. So tip 3 is get a session, because when we have this trauma, maybe through childhood or through life, and this disconnection happens, and we have that hopelessness or depression or all these things, that guilt or shame that are running, and we just can't find our joy. We just can't feel safe in our body or connected. I work personally in my sessions with many people like this, and I really help them get back to feeling their self, feeling their joy, the positive vibes, and as well, Claire does healthy dynamics. And you want to explain just real quick a little bit?
Yeah, I work, my background is physical body too. So I get a lot of people that hold a lot of the traumas and the events that we've experienced in their physical body. So I work a lot with like the how it affects like Darlene's saying, the mind, the body, and the spirit, and doing some of this generational work, things that have come from our parents and our belief systems and our family traits and everything that's gone on. But everything is connected, right? That your mind is not separate from this, right? And our emotions are not separate. And when your spirit kind of gets reconnected, and we defragment some of these things, then everything works together, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, and that's the goal, is like, I think really is moving forward, enjoying the journey of remembering who we are and remembering the things we love, and bringing that harmony and balance back into life and the joy. So don't die without your song sung. Let your soul sing its song. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Claire, for joining us on Last Minute.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next Sunday on The Perspective, where trauma, abuse, and chronic pain and